All right, folks, welcome to the day before FOMC press conference or FOMC meeting minutes market recap. Today, I didn't take a trade. Today, I didn't even look at the charts. I just, went on my day. And as I said at my yesterday, that yes, today I will be some sort of bullish, but that was proven to be wrong. And that's why I made this video because it's a lesson. And the buy changed during the session. So I was correct for the first half, but after the London session, market drawn looking changed to bearish because the market hit the IRL. So on the daily time frame, as I talked about, this IRL is for right gap having SMT with, but the cycle of IRL to ERL doesn't really work like that. You can just go as long as it's an ERL here, market's gonna go from an ERL back to this IRL, from this IRL back to ERL, right? Without really trying to do that, without really trying to go all the way back here, doing this ERL, then go to this IRL, right? So market, that's what happened, and this is why I made this video, so that a cycle of IRL to ERL, ERL to IRL restarts whenever there's a ERL or IRL there, right? So whenever there's ERL and an IRL that's created, that's when a cycle restarts. So now it's gonna go from a ERL to IRL, eventually IRL back to ERL. So because from here, to go back and this is a Boston period, right? So it's supposed to go from ERL back to this IRL. That cycle is going to be needed to restart because the narrative is overall now bearish in the higher time frame, right? So since the higher time frame is bearish and the lower time frame is now syncing with the higher time frame, the drawn needs to change. So now we need to go from an ERL back to this IRL, from this IRL back to this ERL, etc., etc. That's the whole lesson of the day. That the cycle of ERL to IRL needs to restart. When it needs to restart, what I mean by needs to restart, that means when the higher time drawn needs to change, market needs to restart the cycle of IRL to ERL. So meaning it needs to go back from a, instead of just go from ERL to IRL back to ERL. So like ERL back to IRL and then to go back to ERL, you would need to go from a, after it gets the ERL, IRL, go back to ERL, then eventually start from there going to the downside, right? Because usually when it tests after key level before the cycle restarts, usually it will be a Ferrari gap that will get inversed. Not most of the time, but it definitely will be there. There will be an IRL to get, there will be an IRL to play with, and eventually the IRL can lead back to ERL and etc., and change the market dynamics. I mean, it happens every time. So I think let's see if we have any more of these, because the cycle never changed. Over here, let's see if we have any lesson here on this one. This is when the narrative changed from bearish to bullish. So in this case, you can see ERL back to this IRL. So since the market needs to change the direction, this IRL, this Ferrari gap, is going to be used as an IRL back to ERL, right? Eventually back to IRL, back to ERL, back to IRL, this Ferrari gap again, then ERL, which is going to be this low. Eventually, now the cycle needs to restart back to the upside. So there needs to be a change, right? So this IRL right over here. So we need to go from a IRL got changed, right? This Ferrari got inversed. So now go from this IRL back to this ERL. From this ERL, what we're doing is with the cycle changes, it goes below. So as a bullish, as a bearish drawn locally. Says that cycle needs to change. So we're going to discuss the Ferrari gap is now a bullish Ferrari gap here because it got inversed, pretty sure, right? And it closed bearish. So now we're going from an IRL, from here, from this IRL to this ERL. So now the cycle needs to change, right? So we now go from this ERL back to this IRL. Eventually, we start the whole cycle. So now we're looking for a rejection below a low, break of the high, rejection below low, break of the high, rejection below low, break of the high, rejection below a low, below this low, break of this high, rejection below this low, break of this high because there's SMT there. So now the cycle restarted from there on forward. Now we went from a ERL, that is IRL's I inverse. So now go from this IRL back to this ERL, ERL back to IRL, IRL back to ERL, eventually ERL back to this IRL, from this IRL back to ERL, eventually going on here. So now since the cycle needs to restart, it can't just go from an ERL to IRL back to ERL. The cycle is now back to the downside, so it needs to go interrupted. So basically, it needs to go from a euro back to eye roll or vice versa. Then eventually restart the cycle to the downside, right? And vice versa. And this is the lesson of the week. Thank you for lesson of the week, lesson of the day. This whole week, have I taken any setup this whole week? Let me see. Have I taken any setup? When did the start? This is Sunday. I haven't taken any setup this whole week. So yeah. See you guys later. Peace out.